Hello and welcome back, future scientists. I'm Mr. K with Mississippi Public Broadcasting. The past couple lessons we've been looking over state test review questions, and that's what we're going to do today as well. So teacher, if you could go ahead and pass these worksheets out to everybody. Y'all take 15 or 20 minutes to work on it. When you're ready for the review, come back to me, unpause the video, and I'll do the questions on the board behind me. All right, I'm sure that didn't give y'all any problem, but just in case it did, follow along with me and I'll make sure to clear up any of that confusion. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here's our first question. Let's see what this is saying. It says a student filled 6 tubes with saltwater solutions of different concentrations. The student recorded the starting masses of 6 potato slices before placing each of them in different test tubes. The student recorded the final mass of the potato slices after 30 minutes. The results are shown in the table below. All right, it's our job here. What we want to do is circle the words down here that make this statement true. Okay, so for this one, the potato slice in test tube 4 was in hypertonic solution, so water moved out of the potato cell as evidenced by a decrease in the mass. So let's just take a second to look at this real quick. So this is saying test tube 4 was in a hypertonic solution. How did we know it was in a hypertonic solution? Well, look at the starting mass versus the final mass, okay? What's going on here is that we lost mass. You can look at this column right here. We lost 0.17 grams, okay? What is going on here is that if you're in a hypertonic solution, you lose mass to the surrounding area. And so that's how we knew that it was a hypertonic solution. It was because it lost mass there, okay? So let's go to part B here. It says circle a word in each set of options to explain how the cell in the potato slices responds to the different experimental changes. So let's look at this one. This says the solution test tube 5 is isotonic, and the solution in test tube 6 must be hypotonic. The potato slice in these test tubes would have felt more firm to the student than the potato slice in test tube 1. So why do we think that test tube 5 is isotonic? Well, let's look at test tube 5. Look at the starting and the final mass. We didn't lose any mass there. It was actually the exact same, no change at all. Well, that means that water was moving into and out of the potato in equal amounts, because we had the same mass at the beginning and the end, and so that means it must have been an isotonic solution. Let's look at number 6. 6 is kind of different from all the other ones. You can see that this is the starting mass, this is the final mass. It actually went up, it gained mass, right? Well, in what situation would you gain mass? Well, if you're in a hypotonic solution, that means that water is going to come rushing in and that you would actually gain a little bit of mass, and that's what's making the potato slices feel more firm as well. Okay, great. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, so this one, it says an incomplete diagram of a cell in a saline solution is shown. The concentrations of salt within the cell and the solution are given. Draw an arrow in the box inside the beaker to show the most likely direction of water flow and record a label in the box below the beaker to best identify the type of movement occurring. Okay, so we have low salt concentration in the cell and we have high salt concentration outside of the cell. So where is the water going to move here? Well, remember that water always moves towards high solute, and so that means more water is going to move out than moves in. So I'm going to draw a big arrow pointing out to let us know a lot of water is moving out. Okay, great. So it would be this one then. Okay, and what's the best? So down here, what type of movement is this? Well, it's going to be for osmosis, and I was just rereading the question. It says, look at the directions. It says, show the most likely direction of water flow. Well, it tells us what's happening. It tells us that water is flowing. Well, the only one of these that has to do with water moving is osmosis. If water moves, it's osmosis. And so that's how we got number 4 there. Great, let's keep this going. Okay, this says the mitotic spindle is part of a cell that allows for the movement of sister chromatids to opposite poles of the cell during the later stages of mitosis. Which problem would most likely occur if the mitotic spindle stopped functioning in the cell? Okay, so for this one, we want to go with B. Newly produced cells would have too few or too many chromosomes. If these spindle fibers weren't working the way they were supposed to, we wouldn't get the right amount of chromosomes, because that's what their job is to move those chromosomes to the correct cell during mitosis, okay? Let's go to the next one here, okay? So this is talking about a type of organism. It says this is how it reproduces down here, okay? So it wants us to circle one word or phrase in each set of parentheses to best describe this process. Okay, so what's going on here is that the model represents the process of regeneration. This process is a type of asexual reproduction that is most similar to mitosis, okay? The two organisms that result from this process contain DNA that is identical, okay? So this is asexual because we only have one parent. We don't have two parents, so that means it's asexual. It's very close to mitosis because these two individuals are going to be identical at the end of this whole process. Remember, mitosis makes two identical cells. Meiosis makes four unidentical cells, okay? Let's keep it going. Y'all are doing great. Okay. So this says, use the scenario to answer the next two questions, and this has some information on the cell cycle here. All right, let's take a look at the questions. So this one says, the diagram below shows the occurrence of 3 checkpoints in the cell cycle. At each checkpoint, the cell determines whether conditions are favorable for cell division to continue. If the conditions are not favorable, a protein called P53 stops the cell cycle and causes the cell to die. Which statement describes what would most likely happen if P53 mutated and could not perform its task? Okay, so for this one, we want to go with letter A. The cell would divide without control and lead to the formation of cancer. That's what cancer really is uncontrolled cell growth. They just divide and divide and divide and never stop dividing. This is a way we prevent that from happening. We use this protein called P53, and it makes sure that the cell is healthy and ready to divide. If it's not working, it could lead to cancer, and so letter A is going to be our best answer choice there. Let's go to the next one. Okay, after an injury, the human body begins a process of cell division to repair damaged tissues. Which model best represents the cellular process for tissue repair? Okay. For this one, we should go with letter C, okay? This is just showing us mitosis. We start with a parent cell, and we end with 2 daughter cells. This is what happens when we are repairing your body. We replace damaged or worn out cells with mitosis. Up here, letter A, this is meiosis. This is how we make gametes, and this is not how we would fix an injury, because here we're having 4 cells that are different from each other. That's not what we want when we're trying to repair stuff. Over here, this is both types of bacteria, okay? So this is really not going to work. This is binary fission, so this is not going to work for reproducing healthy cells in a human, okay? Let's look at this one, number 13. Okay, this says, the model shows a starfish undergoing the process of regeneration. Circle one word or phrase in each set of parentheses to best describe the process of regeneration. Okay, regeneration is a form of asexual reproduction. Following regeneration, the DNA of the offspring is identical to the DNA of the parent. Okay, part B, down here it says, which statement best describes a negative effect of regeneration on a starfish population? And we'll go with letter A. The genetic variation within the starfish population decreases. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about a couple things. One, regeneration is asexual because we are starting with one parent. Sexual reproduction, you need 2 parents, and so this is asexual. Through this process, each of these little arms of the starfish can become its own starfish. That might seem good because it's very, very quick, but the downside is that there's less genetic variation. So there could be one disease that comes in and wipes out an entire population of starfish because they're basically all identical to each other. So let's keep this going. Y'all are doing great. Okay, this says, the model shows an incomplete process of cell division. Which labels for the daughter cells best complete the model? Okay, so for this one, we want to go with letter D. here's what's going on, okay? So this is an incomplete model of cell division. What's really happening is you can see here through this process, right, this is mitosis, and you can see the different phases of the cell cycle. We have G1, S, and G2 up here. Then we have mitosis. Through mitosis, you end up with 2 identical daughter cells, right? And so that's what these are. But what it's really testing us on is if we know how to use these words correctly. Well, look at this 2N, right? We should know that 2N, we use diploid to describe that. That basically means you have 23 pairs of chromosomes, right? You have twice the number of chromosomes, so 2N, 23 pair, okay? And we call that diploid. B is not, these aren't correct because these are just N, and that would mean you have 23 chromosomes and not 23 pairs, so those aren't right, okay? And then this letter B is not correct because they misused this word. They used haploid instead of diploid. So here D is going to be our best answer choice, okay? Great work, y'all just hang in there. I got a couple more left for us, okay? This says, which step in cell division must occur first so that a young animal can grow into an adult? Well, the first thing that has to happen is the chromosomes must duplicate. Before we separate the chromosomes or before the cytoplasm divides or before we produce the spindle fibers, the chromosomes must duplicate. Remember that this happens in the S phase of the cell cycle and everything else happens after. Okay, here's our last one. Okay, this as a cellular process is shown in the diagram. Using the information provided, which statement best describes the role of the cellular process in different types of organisms? The best answer choice here is D. The process allows cells to make exact copies in order to reproduce asexually or repair cells, okay? These are all talking about different types of reproduction strategies. A lot of these are asexual, and the thing about asexual is that you can make exact copies a lot faster, but the downside is that they are not genetically, there's no variation, which can be bad. So thank y'all so much for following along today. Your teacher has some other work for you to do, so make sure to give that your best effort, and I hope everybody has a great day.